Welcome to What You Need to Grow, the podcast where entrepreneurs discover the inspiration and perspective shifts that fuel both personal and business growth. Each week, certified professional coach Jennie Bellinger brings you powerful conversations with thought leaders, subject matter experts, and innovative company leaders who share their stories of growth and the tools that made it possible. From fresh insights that expand your vision to resources you can explore on your own journey, every episode is designed to help you grow your knowledge, grow your vision, and grow your business. Now, here's your host, Jennie Bellinger.
Welcome to another episode of What You Need to Grow. I am your host, Jennie Bellinger, and I am so excited. As you guys know, this show is all about the intersection of personal growth and business growth. And sometimes we have amazing people on who what they do is really and truly the intersection of both in order to help them out. And Amy Nunn is one of those few people who wonderfully, beautifully straddles the line of both because she's helping people personally and in their businesses to grow. So let me tell you a little bit more about Amy K. Nunn. She is a leadership strategist and organizational consultant. She works with business owners, founders, CEOs, and leadership teams who find themselves stuck in the middle of everything. The team cannot make a decision without them. The same problems keep coming back. And no matter how hard everyone works, the organization moves more slowly than it should. Amy's work sits at the intersection of people, communication, and systems. She helps leaders get specific about where alignment has broken down and builds the structure to fix it. Amy offers organizational alignment diagnostics, executive coaching, and leadership coaching. She is the founder of the Next to None podcast. Isn't that freaking cute? I love it. It's fantastic. Where she interviews women in business, real stories, real people, unfiltered success. So, Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. We had such an amazing conversation a few weeks ago. And I knew when we got to know each other, I was like, we have got to get her on this show because what we talked about was so good. And the fact that, we both come from the assessment world and we have a favorite assessment that we both love so much, which we're going to talk more about later. That really was a big thing for me. So how did you end up getting into leadership strategy and helping businesses figure out these issues of people communication and leadership?
Sure. I was a part of an organization, multiple organizations, and the last one that I was at, I saw leadership being done really poorly. Fear-based culture, the culture is so important in organizations because it really either shows that you're going to thrive in that organization or that business, or it shows that you are going to be miserable. And that's where I found myself towards the end of my time there. I was miserable. I felt like I was slowly dying inside because I was trying to be fit. You're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And that's how I felt. And, but there were things that were happening in the organization, major misalignment, vision changed every other week. I mean, like it just was like trying to hit a moving target. And with that comes chaos for the staff and for your teams. And when I was there, I started doing my certification as a leadership coach. And then so all these patterns just started like amplifying, right? Because I was more educated in some of the things that I was seeing happening. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I would start challenging some things by asking questions like, hey, help me understand why we're doing that. Like, how does that align to the overall mission? And I was being dismissed, or I was being told I was being difficult, or, and all these different things. But I was just trying to understand. But the reality is that I couldn't fix the problems there. I couldn't fix the dysfunction, the toxicity that was happening because I wasn't the one at the head of I wasn't at the head of the ship, I wasn't the captain, and it just became so frustrating. And the people that I was leading, it was affecting, and that bothered me so greatly.
Mhm.
And so I just finally made the decision to leave. But that was what I saw, and I thought, we can do better than this. As leaders, we can do better than this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that's always one of the first great signs of a leader is knowing that we can always do a little bit better.
Hmm.
There's no achievement of perfection, where humans are
Right.
involved, right?
Yeah.
So So you had started this leadership coaching, or started this leadership knowledge, I should say.
Mhm.
And how did that transition then from where you were, where this wasn't working, to where you are now as a coach? Like where did that start for you?
I transitioned off out of that organization, and I just felt really compelled that I needed to start my own business. I have found that I am an entrepreneur. I love everything about entrepreneurship, and I love leadership. I think when people can lead well, their organization doesn't just thrive in the culture, but it makes money. It makes a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so with that, and for you specifically, being an entrepreneur, then um working with other entrepreneurs then probably is where you end up doing most of your work then. Is that the case, or do you find that you're working with more
No, actually
corporate?
it's not. I actually end up working more corporate. I do a lot of executive coaching. I do a lot of training in organizations for different types of things. It just depends on the struggle. I do not believe that a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Every organization's patterns, every organization has a different stamp to it. And so when you go into it, for me to say, "Hey, I've got this five step framework that's going to work for your business," well, it might not.
Yeah.
And so I'm a firm believer of going in, finding out where the gaps are. Is it a leadership? Is it a people problem? Is it structure that just has over time? Like this happens a lot. Systems are put in place, the business starts to grow. Nobody scales the systems for the growth, and you don't scale your structure for your staff as it grows. And what happens? It happens all the time. The misalignment happens, and then you have people frustrated. You have employees that started that are amazing at what they do, but they're so frustrated they can't function.
Mm. And so when you're in that kind of situation, are you coming in and telling them here's what the problem is, here's what the issue is, or how are you exploring that with the company that's hired you?
Well, a lot of times, I'll just give you an example of one of my clients. It's a large municipality that I'm working with. They have
Mhm.
about 400 staff on for this city,
Okay.
and they had a couple of individuals at a high level of leadership that were just really struggling. And the HR director met with me, and crazy story how she got my name. She actually overheard a former client and a young woman that I was actually mentoring for a long time talking about me and how much that I've helped them. And she said, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry for eavesdropping, but I need that lady's number and name." How does that happen? But so when I met with her, I just asked her some questions because the questions that you ask people reveal a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are too busy talking than asking questions. And great leaders ask great questions, and they ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So as you are working with somebody like this and you're taking them through this process, what does that look like for them to get started with you, and how they are diving into these leaders? Well, before we even get there, no, no, no. How, what are they experiencing before they meet you? So we saw you already mentioned, for example, that they got a system in place and it didn't scale well, or they
Mhm.
didn't scale it at all, right? What are some of the other things that they're experiencing before they hire you?
The leader becomes a bottleneck. Every decision has to come from that one person. That's a huge one. That happens a lot more often than people think. Another one is that, you become so frustrated in what you're working in that you can only see the negative. And, as much as people like to say, oh, no, that's not true, it absolutely is 100% true. I lived it. I know it. You
Okay.
know, some of the other things are gaps in leadership. So you've promoted someone and that person is really not equipped. So I say there's three things. There's skills, there's knowledge, and then there's heart. And I tell my clients if they're looking to hire someone, I said, get heart. You can teach knowledge, you can teach skills, but you cannot teach heart. And that has to be the number one thing that someone has in an organization. They're tied to the mission, they love the vision of the organization, but if they don't have the heart, you're going to be beating yourself up against a brick wall all the time. That person will. And they'll become
Yeah.
frustrated and eventually leave, which then what happened is affects the bottom line. So for instance, this organization that I was telling you about that I got the client for, if they would have had to replace these two individuals, it would have cost them over $250,000.
Ooh.
That's how much turnover cost. So letting them go, giving them a severance, and then hiring someone new.
Yeah. That's a that's something that most companies are not wanting to do, right?
They don't want to, but sometimes they don't know what to do. And, you know, there's been companies that have come to me after the fact. They're like, hey, I kept this person and now it's costing me this much money. And I'm like, yeah, that's why you call me before you fire someone. Maybe like for instance, in this case, there was someone that was probably going to be let go, but I worked with them for 6 month engagement and they shifted some things because they didn't see things. Their mindset was like, oh man, they don't want me. This, I'm not winning here, and it also helped with some assessments for them to understand themselves and understand the people that they're working with and leading. And that was a big shift too. I mean, there's things that you can try before you fire someone. However, again, if they don't have the heart,
Yeah.
I I wouldn't hire, I wouldn't keep them because if they can't get on board, the heart is really hard to teach.
Yeah. So let's define that. So you talk about heart. How
Mhm.
can they know heart when they see it? Like how does that show up in an interview with someone that they don't know?
Are they teachable? Are they humble? Do they have all the answers? Do they
Mm,
ask you questions? Those are the main ones. I mean, there's other things that I not thinking off the top of my head, but those
right.
are those are huge. The big one for me is humility. If they are not a humble person, if they come in and they're like, "Ah, I'm gonna fix all this and I'm gonna say, no, thank you.
Hmm.
And you don't have to show up that way in an interview. Show up, and
Right.
if they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, say, I don't know the answer to that, but can I get back to you? Or they ask you a question and you're not 100% sure in the moment, like, can I think about that for a minute? Like, can I just have just a second to think about that? I want to make sure I give you the answer that you deserve. Like there's just communication is one of the things of heart. However, the what I said already, humility, do they have all the answers? If they do, they're probably not going to work well because people who are know-it-alls, you got to cut somebody that wants to learn, right? You
Yeah.
can learn from everybody. I say this all the time to people. If you listen, you can learn from every conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, hello, that's why we're here. This is the
Right.
point of this freaking podcast, man. Is that so? We've addressed this a couple of times. That part of your process are these assessments. So, what is it that you are testing and looking at for the teams that you're working with? How are you? What are you testing and what are you assessing in order to utilize in order for them to get to know themselves?
Yeah, I use everything disc.
Okay.
That's one of the ones that I use. I think I think it's an incredibly powerful tool that has been mismanaged.
Yeah.
I came from an organization who prided themselves in being a educated disc environment. And when I
Okay.
went through my training as a certified practitioner for everything disc, I found out I really learned it the wrong way. It
Mm,
can be used as a weapon in organizations. So like let's just say, well, I don't want to get too deep into that, but let's just say someone's a specific type of personality. Oh, well, that's not what we're looking for that role. Well, let's talk about the role. What is the role actually? How do you know that's not a good fit? Like,
right.
there's just things that not a lot of times people don't ask enough questions to learn more information.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And, DISC is something that I've also gotten certified in and spend time studying. And, knowing what I know about that, each of those behavioral styles is a spectrum,
Hmm.
right? So it's not like somebody doesn't have any of the D dominant driver in them. It's just it shows up differently depending on where they are in the spectrum,
And it also
right?
shows up differently according to their emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not an emotional, like I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, I just don't understand. And this was not a client, this was just a friend.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why I'm getting in trouble for this when I'm just telling them the truth. And I said, well, how are you telling them? Well, I mean, I'm just very direct and I'm just very blunt. And I said, what if that could change? Do you think they would hear you?
Hmm. Oh yeah.
It doesn't, those are tendencies. They're not indicators, they're not performance thing driven. These are tendencies. They're like personality is tendencies. You can be
Yeah.
healthy in your personality or you can be the polar opposite, but there's always an opportunity to grow in it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Exactly. Because the way I show up in the world, for DISC is high I, high D right now, or at least the last time I assessed myself. Yeah. High I, high D. Um, but how I show up in the world, because one of my best friends in the world also, but she's a high D, high I. And most people would be like, well, isn't that the same thing? No, we
Mhm.
show up very differently in the world, even though same two letters, but the order in which they happen
Yeah.
matters, right? And so I think it's the interplay of all of the different pieces because we all have DISC. It's just a matter of where are we for each one of them, right?
Yeah. It's so interesting to me when someone gets their assessment, right? And they're like, "Oh my gosh, this totally makes sense." Like it's like I like the light bulb moment. When I was doing my coaching certification, they talk about like you ask questions for people to get the light bulb moment, right? You
Yeah,
want them so like just a quick educational type of thing. When you're coaching someone, you're not telling them what to do. That's a consultant. Coaching is
correct.
evoking an awareness in someone to help them, get an awareness of something. I'll give you a quick story about one of my clients.
Please
This
do.
this young this young man came and I started coaching with him, and he was trying to build a business. And I liked the guy. I thought he was going to be super successful, and so I was like, I want to help you. And he shared that I don't want to say how old he was, but anyway, he was younger. And he's like, I feel like I really have to have a wife to get my business going. And I was like, tell me more. Why do you think that? My first thought was, dude, no, you don't, you know, but then I was like, tell me why. Why do you
Yeah.
think that? And he started to share with me for about 20 minutes about he had been married four times prior to that. And
Wow.
I said, okay. And he just tells me, and when he gets done and he's like, see, I'm a mess. I said, well, tell me what you think the common denominator was in the downfall of those relationships. And I literally let him sit there for 5 minutes. And I could tell that he just is processing all the things that he just said. And he stopped and he goes, I'm selfish. And I said, yeah. And that shifted everything for him. If
Wow.
I would have tried to fill in that silence or ask him more questions or trying to drive him to an answer, it may not have stuck. There's actually a statistic that says if I tell someone exactly what to do in coaching,
Mhm.
they're 20% likely to actually follow through. If they have an awareness, it's 70% likely for them to follow through. Those are big numbers on either end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge. I mean, it. interestingly enough, as a former educator, so coming from the world of education, we as teachers, good teachers, know that 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 backs that up, right? Because
Hmm.
yes, we educate our students. And when you help the students come up with the answers themselves, when you help them learn how to find the information, where to look, how to use their resources. Now, of course, I was teaching back in the world, back in a time before AI was a thing and blah, blah, blah. But it's very different.
Yeah.
It nowadays versus back then, but helping the students come up with the answers and taking the time to think rather than the easy way out of, oh, I don't know. I believe you do know the answer. If you did know the answer, what would it
Hmm.
be? You know? And then they process and then they try and actually give you an answer instead of
Yeah.
the easy I don't know because they couldn't come up with an answer because they're so used to so many people wanting the fast answer
Hmm.
rather than the right one.
See, adults don't want to give the answer because they know that they're responsible for the answer. So some of my clients will be like, oh, I'm just not sure. And I'm like, yes, you do. You know exactly what it is.
Hmm.
I'm pretty direct with my clients, but
Yeah.
I really care a lot about my clients and I really want to see them be successful.
Yeah.
And so I'm not afraid to be like, yes, you do. Just say it out loud. If you say it out loud, what's going to happen? What's going to change?
Yeah. What do they say?
Well, some say, well, then I have to own it. I'm like, exactly. But some of them are like, well, yeah, that's true, but it's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
It is a mindset thing.
Yeah. Oh, oh my gosh. My brain is trying to go in like three different directions now with all of this. Because no, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, you really do straddle both the personal development and the business development side because
Hmm.
you're helping people to better see who they are, how they're showing up in the world and understanding those things about themselves so that they can now take that into the business world.
Yeah.
How would you say that has impacted you in your business?
I've learned a lot about myself in the last, the 3 years that I've been in business. I've deprogrammed from working for other people. Like there's just this thing that I had to deprogram myself
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. And then also, especially in the last organization, I was there for almost 12 years. And so there was just a lot of things that I had to like, oh no, that's not me. That was what somebody told me to do. Oh, okay, wait, what do I believe? Like, what do I want to do with this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there's that. And I also think that, again, you learn from every conversation. So when I'm asking questions, I'm just fascinated with the thought process of people, the why their like not so much the motives, but I say the why because like sometimes I could give you an example. Sometimes the why is really not the problem. So
Yeah.
I'm talking to this business owner and ran a very successful business with staff and he's like, I want my wife to come work for me. And I said, oh, and I'm thinking in my head, me and my husband would not want to work together. We love each other. We have an amazing marriage, but that's why
Right.
we would not want to work together. And I said, does your wife want to work with you? And he's like, no. And he starts telling me all these things. And I was like, he doesn't have a business problem. And I said to
Mm,
him, you don't have a business problem. This is not a problem for your business. He goes, what do you mean? I said, you have a marriage problem. They had had some very significant things happen with some of their children.
mhm.
And as they got older, they just started growing apart. Now, granted, my former background, I was in ministry for 23 years. So I did a lot of like pastoral counseling and things. And so
Yeah.
those patterns I see in humans, like I just see patterns. And so I'm like, I think you need to go talk to someone because I don't think your wife wants to work for you, just according to what you said. Well, the next session he brought her on, and I was like, okay, here we go. I had her do the disc. I learned what her things are for her. I'm a firm believer of the five love languages. And so I
Yes.
had them do that as well. And I just helped them. Like for 2 or 3 sessions, I was like, hey, let me help you. And so I was like, so, she's acts of service. That means when you do things for her, her bucket gets filled up. And, he's quality time. You've got to spend time with him. And then like within 6 months, he's like, I don't really want her to work for me. And I said, no, I didn't think so.
He just wanted her close again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And for him, it was, well, the easiest way to do that is we should just be together 24/7.
Yeah. So I'm not afraid to get into the weeds of their personal life if they give me permission to, right?
Right.
Because that intersect crosses as much as people think, oh no, it comes here. No, it is right here. It
Uh-huh.
crosses. I tell business owners this, when your business life is a mess, it affects your personal life
Hmm.
and vice versa.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I wish I would have known you and that you would have known that and could share it with me 10 plus years ago. Right. Because, to tell my quick story, I hired my first business coach about 10 years ago. It was 2016, first business coach I ever hired. And in my head, she was my business coach.
Mm,
So we just talked business. And what I wasn't sharing with her was that at the time, that's when my marriage was starting to fall apart. And I didn't make the connection until later, looking back, because, hindsight's 2020 and all.
yeah.
I wasn't growing my business as much as I could have been had I shared what was going on in my personal life, because then I might
Yeah.
have had, some different aha moments during those coaching sessions, right? But I was compartmentalizing, like,
Sure. A lot of business owners do,
yeah, yeah.
or they
Well,
take it home.
yeah. Tell me more about that.
You know, I when I'm home and I'm with my family, I'm present with my family.
Yeah,
If I decide, oh, I'm going to go work for a couple more hours tonight, but I have teenagers that are older, like 19, 18-year-old. My husband, you know what I mean? Like he's not going to
yeah,
be offended if I do that. You know what I mean? But 10 years ago, I wouldn't have done that. When I was home, I was home.
yeah, yeah. And it's very, I think it's different in the entrepreneurial world because we have we love what we do. That's why we do
Hmm.
what we do in many
Right.
cases. And so, for me to be like, you know what, I'm going to put in a little extra time today than I normally would because I'm in flow. Things are working well. I don't want to stop the
Yeah.
flow. I want to keep going, right? Versus, yeah, I was very much the same way when back in the day when I was teaching. No, when I was done, like I stayed and did the grading at school.
Yep.
I didn't bring that stuff home because I was like, no, when I'm done, I'm done. As soon as I get home, I am not going to do the grade. I knew myself well enough to know that I wasn't going to grade when I
Yeah.
got home, you
You
know?
know, it's interesting because I remember, my dad was a workaholic. He worked all the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want that for my kids. I don't want their mom to be a workaholic. And sometimes my clients are like, I work weekends. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why do you work weekends? What are your kids and your wife doing? Or your husband doing? What is it that's keeping you from leaving that at the office? Is it going to be there? Somebody told me this early on in my career. Is it going to be there when you get back on Monday? And I'm like, yeah, it
Right.
is. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. Sometimes there's deadlines and things that, pop up, but it should not be a habitual habit. It shouldn't be habitual at all.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like I said, on the entrepreneurial side, it's like every once in a while I make the decision to work a little longer because, oh my
Right.
God, I hit flow. Like I've got an idea that's running and the juices are going. But that is not every day. And there are times
Hmm.
when I realize that, you know what? Today is not that day for me to be working. I'm going to reschedule some things. I'm going to do what, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
that realization of when the good days are to work and when the bad days are to work has come from getting to know these things about myself and getting to know, like,
Mhm.
oh, today is not a day when I'm going to be emotionally intelligent. You
You
know?
know, that's a great thing that you bring up. Like, if you know that you're not in a good mood,
Hmm.
don't plan that conversation that's going to be probably a little bit of a conflict,
Yeah.
or you're addressing something with someone. If you as a leader know that you're not in a good mood, but you have to reprimand an employee or talk to them about something that happened, don't do it when you're in a bad mood. Would you do
Yeah.
that to your wife, your husband, or your kids? I hope not.
Yeah. Oh, God. One would hope not, but I don't know how many people are that aware of those things. I
That
don't,
brings up another thing in my head. Like,
yeah.
if you have a conversation with an employee and you need to have a conversation, instead of it being a reprimand, coach them. Ask them questions and then coach them through it.
Mm.
Don't just assume that they did it and it was lazy or it was intentional, or find out more information.
Yes. Okay. Y'all who are listening right now, you should have seen my face. Like I was like, yes, the amount of drama that could be avoided by people starting with asking questions would be huge. Like,
Yeah, seek to understand. Seek to understand first.
yeah. Oh my
Most
gosh.
most conflict are due to misinterpretation.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. One of my mentors regularly tells this story of how, she's working with her mentor when they first started working together, and he said something that she was like, I almost fired him on the spot. Like, because she had a different definition of a word he used. And she's like, and he was like, whoa, 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 what's going on here? Because he could tell something shifted, right? And once they both realized, okay, oh, it's because here's what I believe this word or this phrase means, or
Hmm.
this is what it means to me. And then, oh, this is what it means to her. Oh. So once he saw that and he goes, oh, yeah, if if I define that the same way, I can see why you would want to fire me right now. Okay, got it. Well, here's when I use that phrase, when I use that word, here's what I mean by that.
Hmm.
Oh, okay, cool. So then because they were able to redefine that, otherwise she wouldn't be where she is today because he's helped build and grow her in her business,
Yeah,
right? Like I love that because so often when I realize that something has prickled my brain when someone's speaking. I'm like, wait, tell me what you mean by that, right? What
exactly.
what does that mean to you? Because I need to hear that. Like, I need to know what you mean by that because I'm
Think of
having a
the
problem with
money,
that.
think of the money organizations would save if people would just ask questions instead of making assumptions.
Yes, I can. That's got to be huge, huge amount of money that would be saved.
Yeah. It's always crazy to me. Like, I didn't always have the question thing. I used to be terrible at it. I would just walk in a room, leaving dead bodies in my wake, like, you got to do this and blah, 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 blah. And then as I got really like, okay, something people don't like me. Something's got to change. This is years ago, right?
Yeah,
And so I started reading books and I started learning more about myself, and I learned about emotional intelligence and what that means. And now I really pride myself in relationship intelligence,
yeah,
because every person you encounter is a relationship.
yep,
What depth of the relationship that is, it differs. However, every relationship can be important for you in whatever capacity it is, right? So someone that I network with, they might be a relationship, but they're not a deep relationship, right? It's kind of like the circle of trust type of thing. Like, hey, this is
yeah,
my inner circle, this is my outer circle, and these are the ones that are just acquaintances or friends, whatever you want to call them, right?
yeah.
And the relationship intelligence piece is like your emotional intelligence and how you have relationships with people intertwine. And I really struggled with the emotional intelligence piece. Man, I would cut you down with my tongue like that, because
Mm.
I'm like, well, I'm just being honest with you. And I had to learn how to be honest in a kind way. And I did because I realized that I wasn't a good leader when I was
Mm.
doing that. And so I thought, I got to change this because this isn't working.
Yeah.
I'm still a direct person. I'm a direct communicator. That's just part of who I am. And
Mhm.
it's not bad. It's just I use it differently now.
Yeah. No, it's so helpful to have that. And there are some people who will say, well, yeah, but it takes more time to
Sure.
have those conversations. But yeah, but what if that extra time in being a better communicator saves you and your business $250,000 because you coached two of your employees through this
Yep.
issue?
Or if you don't want to coach them, let me coach them.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Because I'm guessing working with you is not $250,000,
No,
right?
no, 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 not even
Right.
close.
Exactly. Exactly. So but I think that's the important piece there is recognizing, that, oh, hey, I as a leader don't have that skill yet. So this now comes down to the who, not how. Okay, so
Mhm.
I don't know how to do that. So who can I, it's going to take me too long to learn how to do that. Who can I bring in to take that on and help me with that? So that way we can get the same result that we
Yeah.
want in a shorter period of time than if I were to learn how to do it myself, but then also can be coached through how to do that in the future.
Yes. And that is the part that I think a lot of leaders don't do, and they should. If you bring someone like myself or Jenny in to do coaching with, some of your staff, like find out what is it that worked. Like I just finished this engagement and like I was getting emails from the top leadership, the leadership,
Yeah.
executive leadership team. Man, there's just so much change happening in this person. This is so amazing. And I was meeting with them, throughout the engagement, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, this is why. Here's the things. And you know, there was a big shift. There was a big shift in some of the habits and the things that they had created. And all people need is a chance.
Yeah.
They just need a chance
Yeah.
with the
Absolutely.
right coaching.
Yes, exactly. And it's if you love how someone is showing up, so that's going back to the heart piece,
Hmm.
all the rest of it can be taught and nurtured out of somebody with the right coaching, with the right
Yeah.
leadership, taking them through the process.
I told when I got hired for that engagement, they're like, "Well, do you have any clients that we can call?" And I was like, "Well, let me ask them because some of my clients I have to sign NDAs for, which is totally
Right.
fine."
Yeah.
And so I said, "Well, let me ask a couple of them and see if they're willing." And they're like, "Well, you don't have testimonials?" And I said, "Of course I do." I said, "But I protect my clients' names
Yeah.
because that's for them to share what growth or whatever that they have." And so one of them was like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely. Here's my information. Go ahead and send it to him." Well, based on that person's testimonial, they hired me. They didn't even talk to him. And I
Mm.
thought, I wonder what he wrote. But I will say this. That same client that gave the testimonial had hired a different coach at one point in time. And it was awful. It was awful for him. They didn't ask questions. There was just a lot of things that were happening. And I
Mhm.
would say to everyone on here, like, not every coach is for everyone.
Correct.
And find one that actually has clients that are happy with them.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds awful, and I'm not trying to be like knock anyone down, but not like I had a client in New York City at one point in time, met with him for about, gosh, it was probably 3 months. And I'm like, this is not working. he and I are polar opposites, and I don't think he really maybe respects what I do because he's from New York. So I was pretty straightforward with him. I passed him on to a friend of mine who I thought would be a really great fit for him. And I did. And, I'm not afraid. I'm not in competition with other people. I think that, we're going to have the clients we're supposed to have, and it doesn't have to be a competition. But I do think you need to do your due diligence when you hire a coach and making sure first that they're the right fit for you. You can interview them. Like, don't be afraid to interview them. But the other piece of that is um, making sure it's a right fit for you too as a coach.
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I could tell stories for days of the mistakes I made early on in my coaching career, right? From doing that. Oh gosh. Okay. Amy, we could keep going forever,
We
but
could.
we can't because, we have some other things we want to bring up and go over. And one of them is actually we're going to talk a little bit more about DISC and leadership and how this could be beneficial. And we're going to do that in the What You Need to Grow community, podcast community on Facebook, but it's also going to be available in the gift vault. So, but before we go there, and go do that DISC training for them to get an idea of what is this. So maybe if they were listening earlier and they're like, what is this DISC, DISC thing that they're both talking about? We're going to tell you guys what that is. But if someone wants to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of you? What is your preferred method?
Yeah, you can email me at Amy, AMY, at next to none. It's NEXTTONUNN. And my website's the same thing. And you can find me on socials at Amy K. Nunn everywhere.
Awesome. All right. Well, we, of course, for those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that her contact information is down in the show notes. Grab your phone, as long as you're not driving, click on today's episode, scroll under Amy's picture, and there you will see all of her contact information so that you can connect with her if you want to know more and you've maybe heard something that makes you want to go, I think we should have a conversation to see that she might be the fit for me and my business. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, as I mentioned, go into the What You Need to Grow podcast community. We're going to share about DISC. And if you're not on Facebook or you don't spend much time on Facebook, go to the whatyouneedtogrow.com, click on the gift vault, because this is where the DISC training with Amy Nunn will be. So Amy, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it. This has been such a fantastic conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation. And I feel like we could keep going for another hour.
Oh, we absolutely could. So we'll probably have to have you back in the future so we can go a little bit deeper into this, because I would love to, after people have an idea of what DISC is, dig into a little more about the DISC and the emotional intelligence piece, because that's not something I've had that conversation. So that one is like tickling my brain in a positive way. I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun. But we need people to know what the heck we're talking about. So they're going to want to watch that video. So, but before we go, what is a last thought about leadership that you would like to leave with the What You Need to Grow community?
I will say, as a leader, probably my two favorite traits are humility and adaptability. If you can be humble and approach everything with humility, you will be one of the greatest leaders that there are. If you want to be able to continue to grow as a leader, you have to be adaptable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you try to be Blockbuster, you're going to end up where Blockbuster is. They did not adapt well, right? They were the video leader until they weren't, right? Oh, I love that. Well, Amy, you are fantastic. I can't wait to have the DISC discussion with you. So, What You Need to Grow community, stay tuned, or go check out whatyouneedtogrow.com for this next conversation. And of course, make sure you listen to the next episode, because you never know what you need to grow.
Thank you for listening to What You Need to Grow. Be sure to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss a single episode. Want updates straight to your inbox? Sign up at whatyouneedtogrow.com and you'll get notified each time a new episode goes live. Here's to your growth. This has been What You Need to Grow with Jennie Bellinger.